Hi, my name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, and welcome to part two of a three-part podcast discussion series with Jake Sorofman, president of MetaCX. Our conversation is titled Why Customer Success Platforms Have It All Wrong, and part one has already been published. So if you've not viewed or listened to that, I recommend you watch or listen to part one first and then come back to this one afterwards. So now please sit back and enjoy part two.
Looking at how most companies are organized today, and you'll see that it is very much not the case that they treat it that way. They do treat it as a role more than a goal.
Okay. So much to unpack here. So, I don't disagree with anything that you've said, actually. I find myself very comfortable with all that you've said. So I do sometimes find people asking me a question such as, how do you save it's going to churn. How do you save it from churning at the last minute?
Yeah.
Okay. And my answer to that is what you do is you wait 11 and a half months not doing anything, right? And then you do some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how you save, how you prevent churn at the last minute is by not doing anything for the rest of the year. Okay. On the other hand, if you were in control of the situation in the first place and you knew what the situation was on month one, okay, and you saw that the milestone hadn't been achieved and therefore the end of the year, the outcome's not going to be achieved, you've got another 11 months to do something about it. And if you see at the end of February that the milestone is not being achieved, you've still got 10 months to do something about it. And what you do is you monitor your KPIs and you check them against your milestones and you prove, working with you. I say when you, actually what I really mean is the customer with your help does these things. It's the customer's journey, not ours. The customer already knows that everything's fine because you've already been working with them to make damn well sure they're fine all the way through the contract length. That's how you make sure that customers don't churn, is by working with them throughout the time and measuring and analyzing and where necessary, making corrections in direction early, not late. So
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Rick. I think the complication in my experience is that it's often the case that these outcomes are not written down. These milestones are not well understood. And the dynamic shifts from one of proactively trying to create value for the customer to sort of reactively trying to mitigate your own risk as a CSM. And it sounds cynical, but let me explain what I mean, because I've been on the other side of this equation a lot, where CSMs are looking to me to allay their fear that we may churn as a customer. So the check-in tends to be more about them than us, because they really have a very incomplete understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve. And guess what? And when I say me, I mean like anyone in a buyer role at an executive level within a company, very, very busy. I get a lot going on. This is like 19th on my list. So I'm probably not going to commit a whole lot of time to that CSM to help educate them on what we're trying to do, particularly if I've already done that in that relationship. And it's just simply the breakdown of communication within the organization. They're asking me to repeat myself? No, thanks.
Plus, by doing what they're doing, they may be proving to you, or at least providing some evidence towards you, beginning to believe that they're not going to be a very valuable customer success manager.
That's right. Yeah.
You probably do better on your own.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So, okay. So my other point then, which again, to your point, is I entirely agree. It's the customer that goes on the journey. As I said, it's the customer that goes on the journey. It is a customer journey. It begins at the very first inclination that they have a challenge that they need to surmount, or an opportunity that they want to exploit. And it goes through a journey of self-discovery, a journey of discovery as to what their needs are that they can't fulfill internally, a journey of discovery who else might be available that has a product or a service that could help us, a journey of then going through the sales process of determining which ones we're going to go to the next stage with and try out and discuss, and a business proposal and all the rest of it, through ultimately to a sale, leading then to maybe customization, maybe manufacturing, maybe implementation, maybe configuration, but whatever, ultimately to switching it on, ultimately to training end users, communicating the needs, etc., and then ultimately finally to value creation, which may be months or even years down the road. And that's just the start, because at the moment you're down by all of that investment in time and money, and you're nowhere near even zero, and you've got a TTV, a time to value, just to get to zero at this point.
Right.
And we forget all of that, and from our point of view we think it begins when the salesperson hands over to the CSM, and the salesperson equally guiltily thinks the job's done. Then well, we've sold them it, that's it, wave them goodbye. But of course from the customer's point of view, it hasn't even started yet.
That's right.
We've got to day zero.
And that's why that handoff is such a critical moment, because there's this cognitive dissonance that sets in between the momentum in the sales cycle and then the silence, the deafening silence at the handoff.
So all right, so I would agree with all of that. Now to your actual point, because I get a bit stuffy about this, right? You mentioned like the fundamental flaw, customer success as a role instead of a goal. So I get where you're coming from. So I think that I don't see why everyone doesn't just get this, right? And yet this gets argued all of the time, right? Customer success, I agree, it's a goal, it's an out. Customer success is when the customer is successful.
Correct.
It's not difficult, it's not rocket science. Customer success is outcomes are being achieved. Now, customer success doesn't happen on a date and time, it happens over a period, but nevertheless, as you say, it's a goal. Customer success management is not customer success. Customer success is the outcome. Customer success management is the process. Customer success management is a collection of best practices, and the customer success manager is the professional who knows those best practices and can act as the professional coach and expert to help advise the customer as to how to get to customer success as quickly, as efficiently, as painlessly as possible with the maximum value achieved. That is what customer success management, and customer success managers is and are. And I do not get why everyone doesn't just say it.
Yeah, I agree with the distinction you're making. I think it's 100% correct. I think the problem is that customer success managers are often not set up to be successful in delivering customer success. They can't do it alone. So they need the coordination and cooperation of a broader set of stakeholders. And that includes sales conspicuously. Of course, sales is a big part of that relationship.
Very important.
That's where the promises are made and the expectations are set.
Yes.
But I think it's myopic to think that, to unfairly indict sales as the guilty party here.
No,
it actually comes before sales. It's sales enablement, it's product marketing, it's value engineering. It's the people that are responsible for defining the set of promises that sales is trained on. So ensuring that whole set of activities, that whole set of functions is coordinated is utterly critical to delivering customer success at scale. And without it, CSM can't be successful.
100% agree. Hi, and apologies for interrupting this recording, but I just wanted to ask you a favor. If you are a CS team leader and you've not already done so, please would you consider completing our customer success training and certification requirements survey. It's not too onerous a task, and indeed the feedback from CS leaders has been very positive, with some of them saying that the act of completing our survey form made them think more deeply about their team's training requirements than they had previously done. All participants will of course receive a copy of our final report, which we'll be publishing at the end of Q1. And you can also optionally choose to receive a free 30-minute coaching session and customized report that compares your responses to the average responses, if you wish to. To find out more and to complete the survey, please go to practicalcsm.com/survey2021. Thank you very much. 100% agree. It doesn't matter how great your sales is if your product is wrong. It doesn't matter how great your customer success is if your sales is wrong. It doesn't matter how great your sales is if your marketing is wrong.
Correct.
And it doesn't matter how great your marketing is if your product is wrong, and so on and so forth. All of these things need to be right. And by the way, you need a legal department, you need a finance team, and you need somebody to sweep the floor and somebody to make the sandwiches, and a bunch of people at the top who need to be making the visionary direction decisions and leading the company and making sure everyone gets it and is on board, and getting the investors to agree with that because we need money to run all this stuff. So everybody plays their part in all of this, right?
Undoubtedly.
Okay, so far, all we've done is agree violently with each other, Jake, and this is very disappointing because I was expecting all sorts of arguments. So, so let's say we've set the scene now for the main part of our conversation, which is let's turn to the customer success platforms now. So, right, in a nutshell, Jake, to kick us off, why do you think existing customer success platforms have got it wrong?
They're too narrowly oriented. They're focused on creating a silo around the customer success function. They're not adequately integrated with the other upstream parts of the customer relationship. Specifically, the sales process, the expectations that are set, the outcomes that are promised, the knowledge transfer and the handoff that happens after the sale is completed, the delivery and sort of organization around that set of outcomes through onboarding, implementation, and the handoff to customer success. And then ultimately the ability to measure those outcomes with real data. What I often see is that renewal time. So you see CSMs that are trying to piece together more of an impressionistic picture. You can see them struggling. You can kind of see it in their eyes as they put together a QBR slide that is just, it's like a patchwork. And you can tell that they just don't have a whole lot of data to work with. And they really wish they did. And they're doing their level best. But that's where we get it wrong. Customer success is focused on managing the relationship, the people part that I think is so important around communication and checking in at the right times, et cetera. But it's fooling us into thinking that, as I said, being busy is being productive and being productive is being effective. And none of that is true. It can actually do, it can create more of an overhead responsibility for customer success than an enablement or, like a really leveraged part of the business that can drive ultimately what companies care about, which is NRR. In any renewable revenue business, it's increasing your renewal rates and increasing your expansion revenue within existing accounts to drive LTV.
Right.
And that requires a totally different approach than simply checking in on a regular interval and measuring health scores.
Okay. So, all right. So if let's say that's the case, then COVID-19 obviously has had an impact on customer success as it has everywhere. But if we left that blip out of the picture for a minute, then what we would have seen over the last decade is like a year-on-year, almost like doubling of customer success in terms of numbers of people employed in the profession, the amount of importance that is placed upon it, certainly within the SaaS industry, if not now moving outside of that. So if we're seeing year-on-year growth in a profession of 175% or something ridiculous, then how can you reconcile that with your perspective that the platforms have got it entirely wrong?
Because I think that we're throwing people at a problem that is much more systemic. It's, engineering outcomes for your customer requires a different approach, not just throwing bodies at the problem. And I think that we've scaled customer success by looking at the problem incorrectly. And that makes it very people intensive. I'm not saying that CSMs aren't necessary, they're critical, but the ratios are wrong. And the ratios are wrong because we haven't solved the root cause of these challenges. We're essentially addressing the symptom.
Okay, so we're taking painkillers to get rid of the headache.
We really are.
But we don't know why we've got a headache.
Correct.
Okay, and the painkiller is somebody nice at the end of a phone, as things are at the moment, but possibly visiting you on a regular basis to kind of hold your hand and tell you everything's okay.
Not good enough.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, I'm sure surely that must have stirred up at least one comment. I'll be really disappointed if someone doesn't get angry at this point with both of them. I would be. Okay, so earlier on in our discussion, you made the distinction between customer success as a role and customer success as a goal. So, okay, so with this, I had my say on it, but with this distinction in mind as you made it, what do you think will be the key characteristics of a next iteration of customer success platforms that you allude to here?
Yeah, and full disclosure, this is what we do for a business. MetaCX has a platform that really helps.
You know, I thought that might be the case.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't be, I wouldn't be interviewing you if you didn't have some expertise in this area, right? So that's the whole point, obviously, is we're interested, through the experiences that you've had to learn how you perceive the reality. So please do go ahead.
Look, the reason we're doing what we're doing is because we think that the problem is still broken, and we want to turn it on its head and think about it differently.
Okay.
And think about customer success holistically as a full life cycle approach that includes all the different customer facing roles that have a responsibility in setting expectations, delivering on them, and ensuring that outcomes have been achieved. All that needs to happen in a coordinated way across the customer life cycle. Yeah. So I think first and foremost, that becomes a key responsibility of the CRO and the CCO, working together to ensure that they've stood up an organizational model and a process that will enable customer outcomes to be, positive outcomes to be created systematically at scale. And then the second thing is the role of the customer success manager shifts from one of just managing a relationship based on occasional check-ins and sending gifts on holidays to one that's much more consultative and analytical and focused on business value creation on behalf of the customer. That's an aspiration for CSMs today, but they're not empowered to do it because they don't have the tools, they don't have the data, and they don't have the coordinated contribution of the other stakeholders who can actually make those outcomes manifest for the customer.
Okay. Well, this is very reassuring because this is exactly how I feel as well, and I would add to that list that they don't have the expertise.
They don't.
Which is where obviously, as you say, full disclosure, I run training and certification. That's what we do, and we absolutely believe. Okay, that's it for part 2. Please subscribe at practicalcsm.com/member to be updated when part 3 gets released, or alternatively, subscribe on the YouTube channel and then hit the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is published. See you soon for part 3.